Yeah, regarding the plan, let me go to Amr. Amr, we watched the film. There is a story and testimony there, and Khalid told us about his testimony. But in August 2014, Human Rights Watch published one of the most important and informative reports about the massacre, titled "All According to Plan: The Rابعة Massacre and Mass Killing of Protesters in Egypt." Would you please remind us of the main findings of your report?
Thank you, Osama. I just dropped my mic, so I don't know if you hear me.
It's working,
okay.
I think.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for honoring me being with you here tonight, and for making time, basically, to remember this important day, which I think is really, there is Egypt before Raba and Egypt after Raba, and there will be no future for this country without addressing what happened that day. The report that Human Rights Watch produced in 2014, I didn't really have the honor of working on that report. I actually joined the organization just the month when it was released. It was other colleagues, Omar Shakir and Heba Muraif and other colleagues who worked on the report, which took almost a year-long investigation. And really a lot of researchers working on this report, interviewing almost 200 witnesses, survivors, families of the victims, lawyers, and also visiting the morgue, visiting the, doing field research in the square during the protests, analyzing satellite images, footage, and it was really a huge teamwork to come with the findings and the conclusions in almost 190 pages, one of the longest reports actually in the history of the organizations. And the main findings is basically what my former director, Sardi, was saying in the film, that this was a plan, a very, premeditated and very, intended plan to evacuate and disperse the protests, whatever the cost is. And maybe I would remind you of a few official statements. Obviously, most of the official statements were exonerating security forces from any wrongdoing, but actually, at the same time, before and after the dispersal, there were quite, I would say, mesmerizing official statements that said conveyed clearly that the government, the authorities back then in the interim government had in mind that they would kill up to 10% of the people in the square during the evacuation. That was a statement, if I remember correctly, by Mohammed Ibrahim, the interior minister. There was also a close meeting to which a few human rights activists and journalists were invited on August 5th, almost 10 days before the massacre. And in that meeting, it was conveyed to the people in the meeting that the estimated number of dead people, if dispersal happens, will be between 3,500 to 5,000 people. So it was really a plan to disperse the protest and to punish people for protesting in support of President Morsi. I think the plan was not just to actually disperse the protests, but actually to punish the people and to make an example of what comes next. And that's why I think the question about whether June 30th was a revolution or a coup is really irrelevant and a bit idiotic. It doesn't matter. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. It's a political question, whatever you support. But what happened next is what matters. And what happened next in the following weeks and months and years is actually the worst experience of authoritarianism we have experienced in Egypt and our country.
The regime is still arguing this point, Amr. Is still saying Rab'a sit-in wasn't a peaceful protest, and they arguing your report regarding the number of atrocities in the report.
First, it was actually acknowledged by the officials during that day, if you remember, that the health ministry was issuing updates about the number of casualties, and they were counting up to 600 something. And then it was also said in a press statement, I think by El-Biblawi, Prime Minister El-Biblawi, that the number of people killed were around 1,000. And that's also what Human Rights Watch said in the report. It was likely over 1,000. I think what's important here is also to remember that the government, the authorities, commissioned two different forms of sort of like fact-finding committees. One was established by the National Council for Human Rights, and the other was established by Adli Mansour, the interim president. They never actually published the full report of that committee, but only the executive summary, I think, was published in 2016. And the report by the National Council for Human Rights was published in 2014. And actually, this government-appointed council said in the report that the government failed to provide safe exits for the protesters. It said that the government used excessive force. It said that the government failed to provide medical, emergency medical care for the wounded, which all violates, basic logic, basic morals before international norms. And I think it's really hard to dispute the numbers, and it's really the responsibility of the authorities to reveal what happened during that day. And even when Sisi became officially the president, the new constitution in 2014 had article number 241 that said that the parliament in the first session must issue a transitional justice law to actually establish the truth of what happened and to, just bring forward accountability and compensation for the victims. And it was not necessarily mentioning, or it was not necessarily addressing the Rابعة Square massacre, but just what happened since the 2011 revolution.